Alright guys, well, I haven't made a video in a while. I got pretty busy with work and well, computer issues in general caused me to not be able to make videos. However, recently I've invested in a new camera with which I can just record offline without having to worry about computer issues. So what we're going to talk about here today is something that I think is extremely significant, which is the current situation with the Baltimore protests. The Baltimore protests, well, as everybody who's been following the issue knows, the situation is rioting now. And that's important because it was initially about a protest, and I didn't look too far into it, but from what I've seen, I forget the young gentleman's name. It was another situation where a young man lost his life due to police brutality, likely because that's why the protest started. It wouldn't have started if people didn't believe that there was some sort of foul play. Not to mention the situation being he apparently had spinal damage as well, and for spinal damage to occur, I've got no idea what kind of brutality would have had to have been done. Hold on a second. I'm gonna close this window here. But what surprises me most about this situation is the media response to what's been going on. See, we get lots of footage on the fires. We get lots of footage on the police car burning, like just the one. I know a couple of vehicles were set on fire, but looking at well, just about every news group that has been covering the situation, you see you hear it identified as protests, but then all they say is rioters, and they show multiple images, multiple angles of the same image, and the question is, why did the rioting start? Now, I heard on the radio there was some official in Baltimore who was talking on the issue, and the show host asked about the racism issue, and he asked about the why or how that could be tied into the situation that's going on. The response of the gentleman speaking completely, and I mean absolutely 100% completely avoided, to the point where he did not even mention the word race in his answer. He continued circling back to, well, the Baltimore police are doing everything they can to end this situation, to solve it without people getting hurt. And then he would go back to the looters and the rioters, and this is unnecessary. And he circled that same answer like 5 different times. It took him maybe 2 minutes to finish this answer, which was in all, it was just one very short answer, which did not answer the question. And the host apparently didn't catch it and just went on to commercial. I think this is crazy because obviously it's a situation, it's an issue, and it's been going on throughout this country in different areas. I don't know if people are inciting it, maybe not. Maybe it's just something that's being brought to light that hasn't been seen before. But it is an issue, and it is an issue of race that is causing the outcry, and nobody is addressing this. Where does this leave into the purpose of my page, the purpose of what I talk about, which is Christianity and how that plays into world events and what's going on? Well, I recently saw on Facebook someone who I know, who does he goes to some seminary somewhere, and he posted a comment saying something to effect of Nepal being, the earthquake in Nepal that just killed 4,000 people approximately. Chile, the volcano that erupted recently, the riots. He also mentioned in Baltimore, and a couple of other things. And he says the earth is crying out for God. Obviously referencing, the end time prophecy that, as if you read the Bible, if you've at least read Revelations, you should know things will only get worse until Christ comes. It's not going to get better and then we're ready for him to come. It's not like we need to fix the world, then he comes. It specifically states things will get bad, they will get worse, and they will get the worst they have ever been in all human history. And then we'll see specific signs that he will come soon. Those signs being centered around Israel, being surrounded by its enemies, the peace treaty for 7 years, and the breaking of that peace treaty 3.5 years into that 7-year peace treaty, and Israel being ransacked by the same person they made their leader. Where is this playing? Because this person who posted this thing, I remember in a conversation with him about end times, I asked him, I was talking about end times and prophecies and revelations that I was learning, and his response to me was that he didn't think it was necessary for us to know anything about the end times, that we didn't need to know these things. So for him to make a comment saying the earth is crying out for our Lord, yet knowing that his heart behind it is that we don't even need to know what's going on, we don't need to be watching and being ready for the sign, which is what Jesus told us, it's hypocrisy. And of course, comments like that, they get all the likes, and everyone says, oh, this person's so holy, whatever. But the heart behind it. So I'm not like, I am calling him out, but I'm not going to call out his name. But that mindset is dangerous, because at that point it becomes loving God in word and not in action. Because he said, if you love me, you'll follow my commandments. His commandments, love God, love your neighbor. And as far as the end times go, that commandment being watch and be ready. If you take it back to prophetic, it's sanctify yourselves against the third and the seventh day. They're 2 days. The third day being symbolic of the resurrection. The seventh day being symbolic of the rest, the return. So people tend to, these days, Christians, tend to sanctify themselves against the third day, the resurrection, baptism. They say, I'm clean, now I'm ready, that's it. But he also says, sanctify yourselves against the seventh day. So what the danger is that these people are now thinking that they're fine to do whatever they want and completely forget about God. And as long as they keep a minimum standard of righteousness, then they'll be fine when he returns. But that's not the case. Sure, they may be saved, but the turmoil that's going to happen in this world, they will not be safe from. That will come upon them like a thief in the night, as Jesus says. It's just going to happen. They're not going to be ready, and they're going to reap the benefits of not being ready when it was right there all along. The warning was right there telling you, this is what you're going to see. When you see this, run. Because that's what it says. So, back to Baltimore. It's a very delicate situation, but it's not going to get any better. Maybe Baltimore might, but I can guarantee you that this situation is not over. It hasn't been over. And we keep looking at them as if they are one-offs or if these are isolated incidents, but they are very, very significant and very, very much connected. There is a very racial standard in this country that has been overlooked for decades, and well, basically since the emancipation, and they have gone completely overlooked. And it's only now where people are starting to think that in order to get a voice they need to take a voice. And that's where these riots are happening. And that's why these riots are being directed at the African American community. I can point out some very simple ways that you can see this is true. The media, the way the media portrays African Americans as actors and actresses. If you see an African American actor who is not automatically like, or who's not, super famous, like Denzel Washington or whatever, they play the same kind of roles. Never the hero, never the heroine, unless it's an all-black movie and it's supposed to be some comedy about how they, whatever, the African American life, as if it's different from anyone else's life. If it's not that, then they are not the stars of the movie. There are never any intermarriage or interracial kind of relationships. If you see it on TVs, sometimes you see it on TV shows, but it's a rare case. You almost never see interracial relationships. This is significant because it's this subliminal idea, especially because we're watching it on TV, hearing it on the news, seeing it everywhere. It implants this idea that this is normal. So what you see as normal is black people get with other black people, they have black children, and it just stays over there while white people do their own thing over here, or Indian, Asian, whatever. Take a look around, go somewhere, look at the relationships you see when people are clearly in a relationship, holding hands or whatever. Look at them. Is there a racial significance or similarity between them? That doesn't mean that I'm not saying we should that's wrong for them to be in love. Let them be in love. I'm saying what the media is pushing is that we are to stick to our own kind of thing. And it's much more prevalent among the African American community, where you see jokes or comedy sketches or movies where if there is an interracial relationship, you see that there is some sort of hassle because they're in that interracial relationship. It's never like, oh, there's hassle because their dog got stolen and now they have to find out where their dog is, and so that's the struggle of the movie. No, it's always they're in a relationship and somebody doesn't approve. What that instills is the idea if you get into an interracial relationship, somebody's going to not approve and you're going to have all these troubles, so why have the trouble? Avoid it altogether. And if it's not that, that's the lighter side of it. The idea that you might have some trouble, but eventually people will accept you, which is still a problem of racism, which should have been eliminated a long time ago. Then you have the trouble of what else are African Americans being portrayed as, and it's clear you're being portrayed as a criminal, a thug, a gangbanger. You're in prison. We want to see you with tattoos. We want to see you with drugs and scars, with dirty clothes and horrible speech, and we want to see you as prostitutes and pimps. And this is how the African community has been portrayed in media, and in the past, and especially today. You think of a black singer or songwriter. What are they making? What kind of music are they making? First word that comes to your mind, rap. And first thing that comes to mind when you think of rap, you don't think of like, oh, Lecrae, Christian rap. No, you think of, oh, Lil Wayne, whatever it is he's saying. The only things you can actually make out are sex, drugs, money, and lots of profanity. And this is how the African American community has been portrayed. And because of that, there's a very negative connotation for people, and it's created a sort of profiling, so that when African Americans or anyone who is different than what's typically accepted as the hero, or what's pleasant, what's good, which in this country is light skin or appearing to be Caucasian, then you get automatically profiled. People don't want to talk to you. They don't want to give you a job. They put a sort of standard or an expectation on you that's not fair, and should not be acceptable. But if you say the magic word racism, then it's suddenly like racism has become the new conspiracy theory. If you say racist, people are like, conspiracy. You think everything is racist. But the fact is, it's a very real issue. And the fact that nobody is trying to address it in Congress is a problem. And I know lots of people will try and say, well, Obama's black, so you can't really use that card. He's just one man, for one. He is mixed race, like myself. It's not a card to be played. It's not a game. It's a very big problem. So to say something like that is out of ignorance. To say that the issue does not exist is out of ignorance. And I guarantee you that the people who say this generally will not be African American. Because if you live as an African American, where you are visibly African American, because race doesn't actually exist. This is an anthropological truth. Race is just a categorization made by Carlos Linnaeus to identify people from different areas. Africa was used the color black, and Europeans were categorized using the color white. South America or Latin America was used the color red. Asia was used the color yellow. These were not indicative of skin color. They were just another bar graph, another chart that used color coding. And it stuck somehow, and people started using these colors to identify people, which is incorrect. Race does not exist. We are all humans. But the fact that people now see in color, and that's a pun, it's in color as in now see that as if there's some sort of difference because of the color, it's become a problem. It was a problem before with slavery, obviously. The emancipation happened, and what it did was it freed up the slaves, and it allowed them the right to be existent among other people from America or other Americans as one, as equals. And obviously, half the country took that to that belief, half the country didn't. That belief still exists. It's not necessarily primary, but because of media today, it has once again risen as a very prominent viewpoint. Because everyone watches TV, not everyone obviously, but colloquially, as Americans, everyone watches TV. We all see the same ads. We all see the brochures where the happy family is all one race, one girl, one boy, one man, one woman, and they're all the same color. They always look the same, because to look different and be in a family is somehow strange to us, which is not strange to me, not strange to anyone else who comes from a mixed family, but it's strange to anyone else. If you can't see the difference, then there's suddenly a problem. Anyone who's grown up in this way knows the truth. Anyone who's grown up as an African American knows the struggle, because you grow up and you realize people start treating you differently. As an African male, even more so. People look at you and they think, oh, well, he likes rap, or he's violent, or he's uneducated, or he's Baptist, or whatever. There's so many stereotypes that are being placed on people for the way that they look. And that's how a lot of this got started, where people started realizing with these situations that we now see, these protests, which are suddenly becoming riots, because people are realizing that these racial issues have been and are being the subject, the true instigators of these violent acts, often taken by law enforcement. And it's not to say white officers or Hispanic officers are doing this because they hate black people. It's not just that. It's black officers too. Just as well as I notice this. Anyone notices this. It's just I'm able to recognize the significance behind it. I too can see where walking down the street and I see someone who's African American wearing what looks to be something I've seen on TV I automatically try to, in my mind, identify them and give them some sort of persona, like as if I already know them. And I often have to catch myself and say, I don't actually know this person. This person is just walking by. They could be just like me. We might actually get along. They may be educated, maybe not. I don't know. I don't know anything about this person. But the fact that my mind tries to go there means that it's a problem. And the fact that many people's minds go there and they don't know how to come back from it is the root behind the issue. That people just don't have the wisdom, the understanding to combat the ideology, the powers and principalities, if you will, that have been instilled in our world. This whole situation, I saw an article saying that the Bloods and the Crips and the Muslim Association have joined forces to eliminate law enforcement. I'm not sure about that claim. I'm not sure. It doesn't bode well with me. I don't see why that would make any sense. Sure, if it was just like, okay, well, these gang members, these two different rival gangs have decided to join up. Gang activity is gang activity, and under common goal, I can see why, that would make sense. But the Muslim Association also, joining up with that, and if it is true, well, that says something about, whatever it is that Islam is teaching. I have, more information on Islam, which obviously is contradictory to every other religion, but sure, that's another video. But if it is true, then that means there is something within the core belief of Islam that is finding this situation acceptable, to retaliate in such a negative manner. I think it's important also at times like this, where we see chaos, to look beyond what the media is trying to tell us. No one in this country will disagree that the media spins things in a very favorable to them and negative light. So the question is, in situations like this, how much is being spun? What are we seeing and what's actually happening? And what else is happening? If we're being shown one thing, if media says look left, we need to be also looking right. We need to be looking at what's not being actively spoken about. And so that's why I'm over here. I'm looking at the world news to see, and of course you look at news that's from something like The Guardian or Associated Press, where the news isn't necessarily controlled by your country. You want to be able to look at what other people are seeing elsewhere, because if you only have the one source, then your view is biased. Not by your fault, but because what you know is what's being told to you to know. You might not be getting all the information. So I think it's important that we take the time to recognize that these days are troubled and that it's only going to get worse. Obviously, volcanoes are not typical, or massive volcano eruptions are not typical. Massive earthquakes are not typical, and these are all indicative of the end times. Earthquakes like what happened in Nepal, what's happened in Haiti, Japan, these things are not typical, and to happen in such frequency is no coincidence. This world is indeed calling out for its creator, but we need to be aware that these are not just kind words. These are not just, oh, Lord, give me the strength, or we long for your coming, or whatever. This is not some Sunday school prayer where we expect to leave and never think about it again. It's a true to life situation that is pointing to the return, and we need to be aware of this. We have to be aware. The Bible says that in the end times, old men will have visions, young men will have dreams. For the past 2 weeks, I've had dreams, which is not typical for me. I don't tend to dream, and if I dream, I'm usually in control of whatever's going on. But lately, every single day, every single time I go to sleep, I have a very strange dream that does not make any sense to me. does not correlate to anything I've read or heard throughout the days, and they are scattered in theme. For instance, the dream I had last night, I was in a car and I was driving on what seemed to be like a land bridge. Like there's like the ocean on both sides, and the water's kind of raging a bit, and it was kind of scary actually. A land bridge, maybe about 50 meters across. You can see it, perhaps at most 2 feet of water, and it goes about a mile or two across to another side to just land, no water. On either side of this land bridge is just a drop off. It's just the ocean. So to drive across that in a car at all would be terrifying. And I was already scared as it was. But I saw the land bridge, and in my mind, this was a bridge that I crossed regularly. So I took my car and I was driving slowly enough across this land bridge, maybe 30 feet onto it. Suddenly, it seemed the ground on that land bridge had been broken, and I didn't notice it until it was too late, and the car just dropped into the water. And being that this was literally in the middle of the ocean, the car immediately started to sink. I was knocked out for maybe a second or two, and then when I came to, I realized the car was sinking, and the water was so frigid. Like, this is clearly ocean water. And I opened the door. I took what composure I had. I opened the door, pushed it open, and I was trying to climb out, but I couldn't because my seatbelt was still on. I unhooked the seatbelt. My bones, my arms, my body was just frigid and trying to lock up on me. And I pulled myself out. The current of the car sinking, as well as the current from the left side of the ocean pushing towards me to carry me out to sea. I fought against that, grabbed onto some rocks and pulled myself up, walked away from the car. I'm not sure what these dreams mean, and they aren't really making much sense, but the fact that I'm having them at all tells me that something is happening. It doesn't say, the Bible doesn't say what we're going to be experiencing in these dreams, doesn't say what we're going to be experiencing in these visions for the old men that are having these visions, but I know that this period has begun. And if I'm not the only one, if you're having dreams as well, feel free to start talking about these things, because one way we're going to be ready for the end to come is that we need to be talking about these things. If everyone's having dreams and no one says they're having dreams, how do you know everyone's having dreams? You won't know, so you'll assume that the sign has not yet come to pass. I'm not the only one I've spoken to about this, and there are multiple people. Obviously not everyone who says they're Christian is going to be having these dreams, because this is for the people who are legitimately watching and waiting. So I know that's going to be difficult to identify, but you can identify it by the people who are having these strange dreams. The second one being that I was driving on a long road, a stretch of land that I know well, out on a countryside, and I looked up at the moon, and it was during the daytime, but the moon was out, and there was something strange about it. And I was with a friend, and suddenly the moon turned into a vortex, and it was just swirling, and that was the end of that dream. It's things like this that are not typical to dream that concern me in times like this. That every single time I go to sleep, if I go to sleep twice a day, I'm going to have 2 of those dreams at least. And that has happened every single day for a few weeks now. What I'm saying is, we need to be ready so that this does not catch us off guard. Because when the time comes that the Antichrist is revealed, it will already be too late to prepare. As Jesus said, goodness, I forget, I think it was Old Testament, but something akin to blessed is the man that keeps his clothes so that when the time comes, he will not be caught naked. Referring to the end time, when suddenly it happens and people are running, being ready, having in this situation, having your clothes ready to go, so that when it's time to go, you can just throw on those clothes and go. Otherwise, you're not going to have time to look for clothes, is what he's saying. It's going to be that quick. It's going to happen, and it's going to be too late to prepare. So we need to be prepared as Christians. In times like this, with these protests, we need to be vigilant in not going out and trying to convert more souls, because that's really not going to help. That's never been what Christianity is about. In fact, Paul talked against it, talking about the believers who go out searching land and sea for new converts, and when they get them, they turn them into twice the child of hell as they are. Now, keep in mind, these people who are going out looking for these converts, they may think that they're doing the right thing, but in fact, they are doing very much the wrong thing. It's not about the numbers. If you take somebody who doesn't believe, and you don't believe correctly, and you disciple that person, how are they going to believe? Incorrectly as well. And they're going to hate you for it, but more so they're going to hate God for it, because you look like you're enjoying this. You look like you're doing it right, and they don't want anything to do with that because it's wrong. They know it, and they'll immediately turn away from it. And you're kind of damning them to an eternity in hell because of yourself, and their blood will be required at your hand, as Revelation puts it. So we want to be vigilant in defeating the enemy in the way that Revelation shows, by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of our testimony. We need to be able to speak to people about what we believe, and as the Bible says, always have an answer for what we believe. We need to be ready. We need to be watching. We need to be well versed in the Bible, which is what we claim. If we claim it and we don't know it, you don't know it, and you're not actually claiming it. You're lying. You need to actually believe it, and if you believe it, then you're trying to know more about it. And half the church really isn't. So I'm not going to cover much on these. I'm not going to follow this Baltimore thing and make more videos on it. I just wanted to kind of point out where we are as a species. We are certainly drawing towards something huge, and I think it's important that we don't get blindsided by what the media is spinning as the most important thing. We need to keep watch. We need to realize that these things are all very small parts in a very big conspiracy, which is the Antichrist, that is shortly coming to pass. And when we see that, we need to use it as sort of an alarm clock, and not hit snooze, but to be awake, to watch and be awake and be ready for what comes next, so that when it does come, we're not caught off guard. So I want to thank you for listening. Once again, I want to say, if you believe, then you need to be trying to learn more while you still can, because once the time comes where we don't have Bibles anymore, how are you going to be able to show your faith? How are you going to be able to speak to anyone if you don't have the references, if you don't have the understanding, if you don't have the knowledge? How can the Holy Spirit tell you what you're supposed to know? It says he brings things to remembrance. So if you've never read it, how are you going to remember it? And that's where people like me, who have read it and who read it consistently and who rely on the Holy Spirit to give us those answers, are going to come in. We're going to play a big part. But it's my wish that everyone who claims to believe would be at that level. And it's just not the case today. But if you hear this, if you're hearing me, you're watching, I want you to get to that point. So please try. And post, I guess. I mean, I don't really care for the likes or getting popular or whatever. If any one person watches this and listens to my voice and hears the things I say, considers them carefully, then I'm doing my job. So talk to people about what you hear from me. Talk to people about what you're experiencing. Don't just keep it in, because if we keep it in, no one's going to be prepared. We need to be talking about this stuff. So with that, this is Book signing off.